Hiya, good afternoon. I hope you've had a really good couple of weeks. I'm sorry I've not been around, but I have been here, just been so busy with work. I've had to take some time out to focus on that. But the good news is I've been doing plenty of writing and I've been doing plenty of reading, so I've got some great books to share with you anyway. So this video is going to be a bit of a book haul and the books I bought in the last few weeks to share with you. And then later in the week, I'll be sharing with you my reading for June, which hasn't been quite as much as I would have liked to have done, but there's some really good books in there that I'm really looking forward to talking to you about. So the first book I'm going to show you is a book that I picked up from the library actually. I've read Sarah Moss before and I've really enjoyed her writing. This is one of her earlier books. This is from 2009 and it's called Cold Earth. And so that immediately attracted me because I like books about cold places. And on the back it says, on the west coast of Greenland, a team of archaeologists searching for traces of lost Viking settlements receives news of a pandemic back home. As the Arctic winter approaches, their communications with the outside world fall away and they're left fighting for survival. So it also sounds apocalyptic. So what's not to love? That's clearly going to be quite high up on my reading for July. So that's a library book that I've picked up. I've also been doing a bit of research into poets who are based in the northwest of England for my PhD. So I've got a couple of books by Lem Sissay. One is his memoir, which is called My Name is Why. And it says on the back, how does the government steal a child and then imprison him? How does it keep it a secret? This story is how. One of the reasons I wanted to read this book by Lem Sissay is that he was brought up in Wigan, which isn't a million miles away from where I am. And I thought it'd be really interesting to read about the challenges he faced growing up in Lancashire. I also have his collection Gold from the Stone, and I think this is new and selected poems. And it says Lem Sissay was 17 when he wrote his first poetry book, which he hand sold to the miners and mill workers of Wigan. Since then, his stories have become landmarks, sculpted in granite and built from concrete, recorded on era-defining albums and declaimed in over 20 countries. He has performed to thousands of football fans at the FA Cup final, to hundreds of thousands as the poet of the London Olympics, and to millions across our TV screens and the airwaves of BBC Radio. He has become one of the nation's best loved voices. So I feel like I've kind of overlooked Lem Sissay, and I don't know how, because all I've ever heard is fantastic things about his writing. So I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in and having a look through there. I've already noticed that there are a couple of references to locations in the northwest which are particularly of interest to me. I also picked up John Cooper Clarke's 10 Years in an Open Neck Shirt, which is his sort of classic collection, and it's was written over 25 years ago, but he's from Manchester. So I've read a lot of the Merseybeat poets, so I thought it'd be interesting to read something by John Cooper Clarke. And again, I know he's one that a lot of my friends are really big fans of. The Bard of Salford's seminal collection, Salford, sorry, not Manchester, I'll get myself in trouble there. A scabrous rhyme vivid now as it was when it was first published over 25 years ago. So I know he likes to play around with language and is quite comic in a lot of his work. So I'm looking forward to reading that. As I say, I'm quite a big fan of the Merseybeat poets from Brian Patton and Roger McGough and things. So it'd be interesting to see how Salford matches up. I also bought this collection by Christopher Reid, Toys, Tricks and Traps. Christopher Reid's a bit of a master of his craft, in my opinion. He's a great poet. His collection Scatterings won, I think it was the Costa Prize of Poetry a number of years ago. But he's just got a beautiful take on the world, makes everyday things feel really magical. In Christopher Reid's marvellous new collection, a schoolboy furtively and thrillingly drops a marble through the top of his desk so that it makes its way in darkness along a complicated chute of books, rulers and rubbish, only to emerge from a hole in the base and be caught deftly in his other hand. The poem is called Homeric and might serve to a clue to the mood and construction of the collection in general, where the poet, now in his 70s, seeks to track down and commune with his much younger self. It is an investigation that tests Wordsworth's The Father, Child's father of the man. Child is father of the man. By contriving a series of transtemporal encounters between two selves who may now conceivably begin to understand each other. So he's looking back on his childhood and kind of communicating that from his perspective now in his 70s. And as I say, The Scattering is just a fabulous collection. I'm really looking forward to reading this. I'm hoping that you'll be able to read that. It's a bit of a bright one. So next I've got another book which is about the North, another book, and this one's by another Sarah Hall, so it's Hall's Water, and this is a book that got recommended to me as I'm looking into the north of England. It says on the back, in 1936, in a remote village in the old northern county of Westmoreland, when a man from Manchester, Jack Liggett, arrived, spokesman for a vast industrial project to create a new reservoir to supply the growing city with water, the small community must come to terms with what this means for them. As the weeks pass and the works take shape, Jack begins a troubled and intense affair with one of the villagers, Janet Lightburn. Yet Janet, a woman of keen purpose and strength of mind, is intent on restoring the valley to its former state. So that sounds quite an interesting read, and so I'm particularly interested in the location and sense of place in that one, but it's one that was recently recommended to me. The next book is Carol Rifka Brunt's Tell the Wolves I'm Home. I'm reading this for a future Six from the Shelf video, which is basically about pandemics, but real life pandemics that have taken place in the past rather than apocalyptic or COVID related pandemics. So this one is about a 14-year-old girl called June and the loss of her favourite uncle to AIDS. There's only one person who has ever truly understood 14-year-old June Elbus, and that's her uncle, the renowned painter Finn Weiss. Shy at school and distant from her older sister, June can only be herself in Finn's company. He is her godfather, confidant and best friend. So when he dies far too young of a mysterious illness that June's mother can barely bring herself to discuss, June's world is turned upside down. At the funeral, she notices a strange man lingering just beyond the crowd, and a few days later, June receives a package in the mail. Inside is a beautiful teapot she recognises from Finn's apartment, and a note from Toby, the stranger, asking for an opportunity to meet. And spoiler alert, I've already started reading this, and it's really, really good. The character of June has drawn me in immediately, and this just beautiful relationship that she has with her uncle. So I'm looking forward to reading on with that one. A few thrillers. One is The Sanctuary by Andrew Hunter Murray. I'm thinking forward to holiday reads here. It says, there's no way back from paradise. Sanctuary Rock is a perfect place. The remote island is owned by a wealthy philanthropist who is building a brand new world on the ruins of the old one. Ben only came to the island to bring his fiancée Cara home, but when he arrives, he is rapidly seduced by the vision of a better way of life as described by the charismatic and mysterious Sir John. Before long, he decides to stay, but the island holds darker secrets than Ben could ever have suspected. So very mysterious. I love books about sort of isolated and distant locations, and this feels like it's going to tie in with that nicely. So yeah, looking forward to reading that one. I saw that one all over the shelves. And I also saw this one, A Missing Person Mystery like no other. And this is by Chris Cars Wilson, and it's Frey. And I think the cover of that kind of captured my interest from the start. I just think it's a really beautiful cover to the book. And the blurb says, I am not gone, Mum is not gone, we are here, we are hidden. So amazing hook from the start. A father who is trying to rescue his lost wife. their child desperately searching the wild forests and dangerous mountains of the Scottish Highlands, not knowing what's out there. An abandoned cottage in the remote wilderness, filled with thousands of confusing, terrifying handwritten notes, and a dark, looming voice who threatens to destroy everything. Can't wait to read that. How could I not buy it? It just sounds really, really amazing, and it sounds like it's really going to be a page turner. And sometimes, particularly if I'm really busy with work, that's what I want. I want a page turner. I want something that's just going to suck me in and just give me a really good roller coaster ride and be, just devoured in a couple of days. So I think that might be one of those. Last of all, a couple of books that I picked up in the last few days. One is The Beasts of Paris by Steph Penny. The reason I picked this up for two reasons. One, I read The Tenderness of Walls by Steph Penny and really, really loved that a number of years ago now. But also the themes in this one. I recently wrote a poem that was sort of based around the same themes, and I'm really interested to read a novel that's about the time period. It's basically the late 19th century in Paris, when it's siege, and well, I'll tell you what it says. It says, Paris 1870, three wandering souls find themselves in a city set to descend into war. Anne is a former patient from the women's asylum, trying to carve out a new life for herself in a world that doesn't understand her. Newcomer Lawrence is desperate to develop his talent as a photographer and escape the restrictions of his puritanical Canadian upbringing. Ellis, an army surgeon, has lived through the horror of the American Civil War and will do anything to avoid another bloodbath. Each keeps company with the restless beasts of Paris's famous menagerie, home and prison to the glamorous predators that draw visitors from all walks of life. Yet these fearsome animals are innocents alongside the looming dogs of war. In a city under siege through one terrible freezing winter, three characters meet, fight their demons, rebel, and lose their hearts in this dazzling historical epic of love and survival. And when I opened it up, I discovered it was signed, which was a lovely little bonus, I have to say, as well. But if I remember rightly, or I do remember rightly, in the siege of Paris that this book is about, they ended up eating a lot of the animals in the zoo, and that really intrigues me in a kind of grim and macabre kind of way. It's got beautiful cover as well, so really looking forward to reading that one. That's definitely one that I think is going to get the treatment during July. There's just nothing about that that puts me off. And finally, this is a book that I saw Lauren and the Books mention and immediately thought, yeah, that sounds up my street. And this is called The Other Side of Mrs. Wood by Lucy Barker. And this is a sort of mysterious book around mediums and frauds, but it's also a comedy. So it really ticks the boxes for me in terms of the gothic, but also sometimes it's nice to just read something that hopefully is going to make you giggle. So it says, England 1873, Mrs. Wood is London's most celebrated medium. She's managed to survive decades in the competitive world of contacting the other side. Having avoided the dreaded slips that reveal others as frauds, and she's still hosting packed-out seances for Victorian high society, yet some of her patrons have recently cancelled their appointments. There are reports of American mediums materialising full spirits and audiences that are no longer satisfied with the knocking on tables and candle theatres of years gone by. And then, at one of Mrs. Wood's routine gatherings, she hears something truly terrifying, a yawn. Mrs. Wood decides to spice up her brand. She decides to take on Emmy Finch, a young protege, to join her show. But is Emmy the naive ingenue she seems to be, or does she pose more of a threat to Mrs. Wood's reign and, more horrifyingly, her reputation than Mrs. Wood could ever have imagined? And I just really love the cover of that one as well. So as I say, I've read a few books, around mediums and based in sort of the Victorian era. So I thought that this would be an interesting one, but also, as I say, it sounds like it'd be quite funny as well. And who doesn't need a bit of humour every now and again? So those are my book haul for June, and those are some of the books I'm going to be focusing on in the next month, amongst all the others that I have around me. As you know, I have a bit of a problem, and no doubt there'll be another book haul at some point as well later on in the month. But do let me know if there's any of those that intrigue you, that you fancy reading, or that you've already read. I'd love to know what your thoughts are, and if there's any that you think I should prioritise. But I hope that there's something there that maybe intrigues you enough to go out and buy it, and let me know what you think. I'll speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye.